Frank Bonada here, joined by Mohammad, Sheikh. We're here for the MMA stream, first episode of the new podcast, and we're here in the aftermath of UFC 286, Edwards versus Usman 3. Just wrapped up. Leon Edwards defends his title in his hometown, or his home country at least. What do you make of that fight? What do you make of the event? Just, incredible scenes.
Yeah, I think it was an amazing fight. In terms of the event, like I felt like London is usually more louder in that's what I've noticed in like some of the previous events, and it was a little bit quiet this time. So I was wondering what might be the cause of that, right? But in general, the event was like absolutely fantastic. All the fights were great, and especially the Usman versus Edwards fight was like back and forth throughout the entire 5 rounds, and yeah, it was a great fight. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that about the crowd, because I saw people talking about that on social media and whatnot. And the thing is, I think it's mainly because that UFC Fight Night, Aspinall versus Volkov, was such an incredible spectacle throughout. The crowd were amazing. You had, this was Paddy Pimblett and Molly McCann's big coming out party, and almost every British fighter was getting wins and stoppages, and there was just this rolling crescendo of almost audience participation. But if you remember the second Aspinall fight card last year against Blades, and that ended a bit unceremoniously, but even throughout that fight, there wasn't the same level of buzz. And I think the audience were better than that one maybe in this, but yeah, it wasn't quite
the usual.
I think they said it so high.
Yes.
With that first fight that it's almost impossible to recapture that moment. But the fights were amazing. I really enjoyed it.
Could it also be that maybe Leon is just becoming the fan favorite for the UK audience, right? Because he didn't have that sort of following before he became the champion, right? As soon as he became the champion, all of UK is behind him. So maybe that audience is still building up, his fan base is growing, and it just shows how, if you don't have any of the other UK favorite fighters on the card, then the buzz isn't the same. But even then, it was a great audience, great crowd, and an awesome event.
I think there was a big part to play in it, because really, if you look at the main card outside of Leon, not really any traditional UK fan favorite. Gunnar Nelson's on there, and he's featured in a lot of UK cards. But I don't know. After his last fight, the sort of 3-round back take decision victory over Takeshi Sato, like, it was very underwhelming. And Casey O'Neill losing to Jennifer Maia, Marvin Vettori just about edging a win over Roman Dolidze. They're not the most inspiring fights or results. Obviously, Gaethje Fiziev was always going to be a spectacle. But I think maybe with that fight, obviously you're just enjoying the violence, the technique, the just two elite athletes going at it. But from a crowd perspective, who do the UK guys support? There's not one guy that they're going to back and one guy that they're going to boo, which was part of that magic of the Aspinall Volkov card. Yeah.
Totally. And like you mentioned, like stylistically, people want to watch like striking over like grappling, right? It's just the hardcore MMA fans who enjoy like every aspect of MMA, whether it's grappling or striking, right? But most of the people, they're just there for the violence, and violence comes from mostly striking, right? Otherwise, like ground and pound, you don't get to see that a lot when you have like wrestlers or fighters like Gunnar Nelson who just want to like grapple, or maybe like BJJ, just make the guy submit. So, but I enjoyed that, and I think a lot of the MMA fans enjoyed that. So that was pretty good.
I shout out to Gunnar Nelson, because that was a real slick armbar submission. Like
it was. And Barberina is not a joke, right? Like if he wouldn't have been able to take him down, it would have been a long night for Gunnar.
No doubt, yeah. But a tough fight for Barberina to take on short notice. So you got
for sure
a little bit. But I mean, look, let's get into the fight at the top of the card, the fight that this whole card was built around. Leon Edwards against Kamaru Usman in the trilogy bout. Edwards obviously coming off that just iconic, sensational head kick KO where he finished Usman in Salt Lake City. The second fight, if you think about it, they fought 8 rounds together, and Usman had won 6. Essentially, and he pulls out the head kick, and then but people start calling that a fluke. So they're like, right, we'll run it back one last time in the UK. And man, the thing I really took away from not even just the fight, the whole fight week, like Leon has become a champion. He has that confidence. There's a swagger, not even a swagger, because it's not like cocky. It looks like he's in the right place. His mindset is solid. He just, I don't know. I think Leon Edwards has become a champion at the very perfect time of his career right now. And I think he's going to reign for a while now.
Yeah, that I totally agree in terms of like his confidence level going like way above like what he was when he wasn't the champion, right? So there's what, like he's 30-40% better than what he was in terms of like confidence. And I think even like his previous fights, like the last one, if you look at the last one with Usman, it seemed like the only problem there was his confidence. Like his striking was on point. He was, sort of in his groove in the first round. And then second round, like sort of his confidence went down, and Usman was having success taking him down. And it really shows in this fight that he can match Usman's grappling, right? At least he can defend those takedowns, not if he's not even throwing his own. And then counter with his striking, because his striking is like way better than compared to Usman, right? I really sort of like sensed his confidence from like the pre-fight press conference, just the way he was carrying himself, just the way he was speaking to the audience, and he was like grabbing attention from the audience, and nothing that Usman was saying was affecting Leon at all. And I felt like he was able to get into Usman's head a little bit. Like he would laugh at everything that Usman was saying, and it was just pissing Usman off a lot, right? And he was able to cheer up the crowd, right? And the crowd was behind him, and his confidence was just like through the roof. And there was this moment even at the beginning of the fight when when they called out Usman's name, and Usman sort of walks up to Leon's face. Like he does that to every opponent, right? So he walks up to him like pumping his chest, and Usman goes like bang, 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 right? That was like an insane moment. It really showed like he was really confident in what he was about to do in that fight, and he proved it, right?
Absolutely. There's an incredible picture that Jeff Batari, I think works for Geathje Images, took of that moment. I'll maybe pull it up to show on the screen, because Usman does that every time he walks people down, and I think maybe that is like a last second intimidation sort of thing. But Leon, with that crowd behind him, with that KO on both their minds, no doubt, he rose to the occasion and just that was sensational. Also, I like what you say about the takedowns, because I think and also like in terms of mentality in that second fight, it looked like Leon was getting mentally crushed each time a takedown landed. You could see the sort of the visible reactions to it. Even if Usman wasn't having like a huge amount of success with it, it's not like the ground and pound was anything too notable, but it was just the mental I guess loss of losing that mini exchange, and each time it was taking a toll on Leon. In this fight, I mean, the takedown defense, the clinch game from Leon was just sensational. Really, really just every time propping up, using that clinch to break out, landing the knees from the clinch. Oh my goodness, that knee that rocked him. What, I was just like, just beautiful. And then the body kicks as well, repeatedly landing that, because in Usman's head, he's like, at some point the head kick's going to come, so he's going to keep the hands up, and that opens up the body. Incredible game plan from Leon with that sort of approach.
Yeah, and in terms of like both fighters, like improvements, I felt like Leon's speed was like even better than the previous fights. He was like
So
really
fast.
fast. He was so fast. And on like Usman's side, I felt like he was slow. I don't know if that was from like an injury, during the training camp that he hasn't disclosed or something, or maybe it's just age getting to him, because that really is a factor, right? Usman's now what, 30, 35, 36?
Nearly 36.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nearly 36. And I think that slowdown is sort of like showing in his game now. Um, and for any fighter who's good with his defensive grappling, if the grappler is gonna start slowing down and isn't able to throw enough takedowns in there and doesn't have the speed to sort of like set it up before they actually attempt a takedown, they're not gonna have a lot of success. And that's what I noticed. Like Leon was like way faster than Usman. He was like pop, pop, pop out of there, right? Each time he would throw strikes. And even like the power, like I didn't feel like every time Usman connected, that power wasn't the same as we've seen versus maybe the Masvidal fight, right? Where
Yeah.
he was able to like knock him out cold. No, even the second fight with Leon, right? Like when he landed, there was some impact to those
Mhm.
strikes, but in this fight, it was like flat. Like I didn't see that power coming from Usman, and the speed wasn't there at all.
What I find interesting is that because it felt to me, like you say, like Leon really ran away on the feet, but just looking like at the total strike count, it's not a huge differential between them. We've got 123 total strikes thrown by Leon throughout the fight compared to 113 from Kamaru.
Yeah.
But where you see the difference is significant strikes, isn't it?
Yep.
120 landed from Leon Edwards, only 87 from Usman. And yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like Leon was landing shots, like he wasn't, discriminating about hitting anywhere in the body. It was
Yeah.
the leg shots, the body shots, knees from the clinch, anywhere. I was so impressed by all of that. But then like I don't know. I feel like people are going to start to say, "Oh, Usman's washed," etc., etc. But I mean, he was on Leon the whole time. The pressure game was just relentless.
Yeah.
And right, that's the thing. Leon landed 120 significant strikes, almost all off the back foot, which I think is even more impressive considering in the first fight when he's on the back foot, he's getting pushed against the cage. Um, Usman's using it to initiate clinch strikes or takedowns and all of this. But this time, Leon, he fought in a very similar way, just modified
Yeah.
to a point where he could take advantage of it. But I
Yeah.
have to ask, sorry, but how did you score it? Because people going back and forth. I know a lot of the UK fans were very happy with how it was scored, but obviously we had the fence grab, the point deduction. What are your thoughts on the scoring?
I think on the scoring, I think the judges got it right, but
Yeah.
I thought round one was Leon. Uh, Maybe round three and four was like a little closer for me, but I really felt if if I was a judge, I would give it 4-1 to Usman,
Yeah.
to Leon. I mean, I felt like Leon was dominant every round, pretty much every round. There would have been like one round that maybe would go to Usman.
Yeah. I scored round 3 for Usman. But it's funny because technically that would be a 10-8 round because that was the round that the defense grab, so we got the point
Yeah,
deduction.
yeah,
And yeah, I think yeah, 2 and 4 were relatively close, but I think it was the right choice. And I'm glad that it didn't end up being like a draw. And then like obviously Leon retains the belt, but then you got what, you're gonna extend it for a 4th fight. I feel like we just don't need to see that at this point. Leon's on to bigger and better things, hopefully.
yeah. And talking about like people might say that Usman's washed up, right? But Usman was like the pound for pound number one,
People say
right?
he's better than GSP.
He was in that GOAT status
Mm.
before losing that fight, right? So he's not washed up at all in this like little period of time between the second fight and this fight. It's just that Leon has improved drastically, and his confidence level has made things like even better.
Mm.
There's just this level between Usman and Edwards at this point. So I don't think Usman's washed up. I think he probably is towards maybe going towards his decline now,
Yeah,
but I don't think he's washed up at all.
that's the thing. I think with Usman, he's that sort of level of athlete that he can keep competing for a long time, but he has got these long-standing injuries like his ACLs and his hand and whatnot. And um, yeah, I mean he's with Trevor Whitman, and it's a real good camp that they've got there. So I feel like make the right choice when the time is right. It's just that right now, like, who the hell does Usman even fight? I mean, we'll get onto Leon in a moment, but like,
Yeah.
he's fought half the division.
Yeah, even before that, let's maybe talk about the fence grab there, right? What were your thoughts on that? And do you think that
Yeah,
the point deduction was the right thing to do?
it absolutely was the right thing to do. Yeah, it was blatant. Look, I'm British. Obviously, I'm going to back Leon to a certain extent, but it can only go so far. Yeah, there was also a number of groin shots.
Yeah.
That it's a shame because those things sully what was otherwise an almost perfect performance from Leon Edwards. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think the point deduction was, the right decision. What I didn't like about that happening was that Herb Dean didn't stop it and call for
Yeah,
the point deduction. It was like Usman protesting for it and then Herb Dean sort of reacting to his protest, right? It should have been like Herb Dean stopping them, taking away that point. And I think Herb's been making those sort of errors like quite a bit
yeah.
these days. So I think it was justified, but it shouldn't be that the fighter protests and then, the referee jumps in and sort of like does his thing.
It was weird. I don't know if you heard, but he was actually like apologizing to Leon for it. Like, because he's like, first he's like, oh, break. And then Usman complains and he comes over to Lee. He's like, oh, yeah, sorry, I'm going to take a point now. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't, it goes through me every time Joe Rogan's on commentary and he says Herb Dean is the best in the business. Because I'm like, how can you say that after the amount of
Yes,
horrendous blunders that man has made time
absolutely.
time
Yeah, we
after
could, we
time?
could probably do an entire segment just on that.
Do a whole podcast on
Do a whole
it.
podcast on that. Yeah, I know. There's been like so many, but yeah.
I mean, especially when there are guys out there like, I mean, Jason Herzog, I think is um the best out there, but I think Mark Goddard's excellent.
Yeah.
Um,
How about Mario Yamasaki?
yeah, it's like, yeah, less said about him than better. Oh, him and yeah. But yeah, all right then. Let's discuss Leon's next steps then. Dana's just straight out come and said it's Colby Covington.
Yeah, I don't know when we'll do it, but yeah, that's the fight that makes sense. And Colby came here and cut weight, and did everything to be here for this fight. He deserves the fight.
So it's Leon Edwards versus...
Not to mention the fact that he's, the second or third best guy in the world.
So it is Leon versus Colby next.
Yeah.
Look, I don't hate the fight. I think the fight is fine, but I think it should be on Leon's terms. I think if he wanted to fight Colby Covington, I think he should be able to say, "Oh, that's the fight I want next. Let's book it." Because realistically, Colby's been out for like what, a year and a half or a year and 3 or 4 months. He's been out for an extended period of time.
Yes.
On a 1-fight winning streak over Jorge Masvidal, who isn't even in the top 10 anymore, I don't think, or maybe just fringe.
It'd be surprising if he is.
Yeah, exactly. But the only thing is with me making that argument is the counter argument is obviously Leon wants to go to Miami to watch Burns versus Masvidal. And I know there's a story between Leon and Masvidal, the whole 3-piece in a soda.
Yeah.
But even if Masvidal wins, then it's like a guy barely ranked in the top 10 getting a title shot. It's a tricky one. And I know Dana's done it because Colby weighed in as a backup fighter. Fair enough. But also the man being left in the dark completely is Bilal Mohammad.
Yeah.
Who now looks like he's going to fight Shavkat Rakhmonov, which is just a hellacious fight for him.
I know. Yeah, I don't know. Like I think this is more of like a business decision from Dana than rather than what the rankings say or what the fans want, right? Because I think regardless of what you say, Colby is able to like build up that storyline, bring in that drama into just make it more entertaining overall. So I think that's why, and maybe I also feel like maybe it's that Donald Trump relationship there with Dana.
Oh yeah.
It could be possible. I don't know. Like he's definitely close to the Trump family, and so is Dana. So maybe that connection sort of works in there. But then overall, like he brings in the entertainment. He's still in the mix. So it's somewhat justified. And then he made weight, He showed
Yeah.
up, he made weight. That's also another factor, right? Is the fight gonna be as entertaining, or like is it gonna be a closer matchup? I don't think so, because I think between Covington and Usman is probably the better wrestler, and even striker. You know, like striking wise, like I don't think Colby's better than Usman, and we've seen what Leon was able to do with Usman. So I think that fight favors Leon a lot. And talking about Bilal Muhammad, I think although he's like on a tear through the division and has made his way up there, and now he has a better camp working with like Khabib and all those guys, he just doesn't bring the eyes, you know, to his
really
fights, because his fighting style isn't entertaining at all, right? And his character or anything about it is not the one that sort of like pulls audience and puts those people into the seats. And I think that's a big factor with the UFC, right, these days. Or like even like early on into maybe a couple of years, you know, when UFC's just been focusing on who are the fighters who are entertaining, rather than like they've been just tearing through the rankings and how are people following him. And I don't think Bilal brings that to the table at all. I think the only place where he could maybe pull some audience is Abu Dhabi, but for Abu Dhabi, they already have a star in Islam Makhachev, right? Makhachev can pull those events off any day for the Abu Dhabi card, and he's also the champion, right? So they don't need another guy there.
Speaking of Islam
Yeah.
Makhachev, he called out Leon. He took to Twitter and said, "Let's do it, Abu Dhabi." I mean, complete rogue move from him. Like, not fighting his own division anymore. He's just fighting featherweights or welterweights. But I don't know. What do you think about that? Like, the top of lightweights tied up, and a lot of guys that have fought each other and whatnot. It probably won't happen unless Leon fights Colby like soon, because like Abu Dhabi's like tail end of the year. I mean, it might be enough time for him to turn around. But yeah, what do you think of Makhachev versus Edwards in Abu Dhabi?
I think he's just being overambitious and trying to prove that, you know, like I'm still the pound for pound guy here. Like I can call out anybody, and you know I can go up a weight class. You know, if that's the if that's what UFC wants to do, like he's ready for any challenge there, right? He just wants to prove his point, like he's the best guy out there. And I think more so because everyone was talking about Islam Makhachev being like the sort of like the untouchable guy in the division until he fought Volk, right? And Volk sort of like messed his entire untouchable image in the fight scenario. Yeah, he made him look mortal. And I think he wants to get back to that status of like, hey, you know, I'm the guy here, like no one can touch me and stuff like that. And the funny part was like when he threw out that tweet, I was just looking at Twitter and people replying under that saying, hey, you trying to like duck Volk now? That's why you want to go out and fight me?
Yeah.
But
I don't blame him for trying to duck Volk as well.
Oh yeah. But I really think like both Volk and Islam should stay in their divisions for a while, because they have people out there to fight. There are like really good contenders for them to fight. So yeah.
Well,
nice
it
try
looks like
is what I would end that for.
It looks like Volk's going to fight Geathje this summer, possibly International Fight Week. So that's great.
Yeah.
If it was in Mexico, that would be insane.
And what a fight that's going to be, because Geathje looked incredible. Oh my God.
So good. Yeah.
I want to see that fight.
Genuinely, yeah. Before the Emmett fight, I mean, we're going way off on a tangent right now, but before the Emmett fight, I was kind of like, Geathje probably. What's he got for Volk? But just seeing him in that fight, he hits so hard, so fluidly, and I don't know. He's just like a pure action fighter. He reminds me a bit of like Charles Oliveira. It just in that like he just brings everything, every single shot he throws everything into it. And speaking of Oliveira, that's probably the fight for the winner, right? Oliveira's taking on Beneil Dariush. And then that's probably the winner of that's probably going to fight Makhachev in Abu Dhabi. I think, let's be honest, that's the one to make. But Suddenly, Justin Gaethje's just like left by the roadside, despite beating an elite fighter in Rafael Fiziev.
Yeah, I think probably Dustin Poirier is the guy they should make that rematch for Justin Gaethje. I think that's the one that makes sense. He wants that one back. And you know, he's up there in the rankings now, and Dustin's just like the gatekeeper or something over there right now. But yeah.
That's it. Yeah, there isn't another fight for either guy right now. So to be honest, I bet Poirier was watching that Fiziev fight and thinking like, please let Fiziev win, just so it's like some new blood in the top echelon of the division. But
I know.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to touch on as well. Well, on the topic of the elite of the 170-pound division, Dana White confirmed that Khamzat Chimaev is moving up to middleweight and will fight a top 3 fighter. Having a quick look at the rankings, that would be
so there's Adesanya, we have Perez the champion, Robert Whittaker. I think it's the Whittaker fight.
Ooh,
I think so.
That's a great fight. That I think I favor Whittaker, to be honest. I think that's like probably one of the hardest fights for Chimaev at 180 pounds, 85 pounds.
Yeah. And I guess his fight with Gilbert Burns really showed like his level of striking.
Yeah.
He was a bit careless and he didn't follow plan and stuff like that. He was supposed to wrestle, but even then, like if Gilbert Burns can do that to you, Robert Whittaker will just like take you apart, you know. If he's able to maintain that distance. I don't know who has the advantage in terms of like the distance. But I think wrestling wise, right, like Robert Whittaker would be able to like cancel out some of Chimaev's wrestlings and sort of like bring it to maybe a stand up. And I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I would also think that it favors Whittaker there.
I agree. Yeah, it's a tough fight, but it's a great fight. I would love to see it. All right then, moving on. We kind of touched on Gaethje before, but let's get into that a bit more. Of course, it was a barn burner. It was always going to be Gaethje versus Fiziev. A little bit more, slower start from Gaethje than in some fights. Maybe trying to be a bit more technical, or avoid getting into those crazy exchanges in the early going. But I mean, come round 3. And it was just vintage Justin Gaethje just throwing down with Fiziev in there. I agreed with the decision, but at least one judge, had Fiziev up. Had Gaethje winning a 10-8 round in round 3, which I didn't personally agree with. I thought it was just a standard 10-9 round. But what's your read on that one?
Yeah, I think the rounds were close. I would. Yeah, the 10-8 is arguable. I think I would still give it a 10-9 because Fiziev did land his own shot as well. Even though round 3 was pretty much all about Justin Gaethje, right? He landed that uppercut like over and over. It was like Fiziev was like just lost. He wasn't able to like understand what was happening, and just allowed that uppercut to keep coming. And he would keep doing the same thing, keep getting caught up with the uppercut, but it was just a Justin Gaethje show in round 3, right? And the amount of damage that you see on the face of Fiziev, my God. I think Fiziev put out a picture himself of his face like bloodied up. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
he said it was worth it just for the pick.
Yeah. When you get in with a Justin Gaethje fight, always make sure to look at that picture and think twice what you're getting yourself into. But it was an amazing fight. Fireworks, like as expected. And a lot of people were calling it the people's main event, and very, very well could be, right?
Yeah, 100%. Now Gaethje's saying he wants one last run at the title, and like we said before, I think Poirier is the route to go. Stick that as like a 5-round co-main event on the McGregor versus Chandler card, and that is just sensational. That would be amazing. Yeah, I think that's the route to go.
If we ever get to see Chandler versus Conor, I don't know what's going to happen there, right? Because still not in the USADA pool. It's going to take 6 months for him. He's literally like ignoring that. He's like, I don't care about USADA. Like, say whatever you want, right? So I don't know how that's gonna go, but yeah, I think it's a good idea to put those two fights on the same card.
Yeah, just imagine like the press conferences, like Poirier and McGregor at the same like venue again. Poirier and Chandler, even they've got beef as well. So yeah, a couple of good fights. Couple like just personality. The personality clashes would be brilliant. And then just to wrap up, I mean, wasn't it brilliant to see Anderson Silva finally inducted into the Hall of Fame? I mean, he should have been there a long time ago.
Long time ago, yeah.
But, I guess he didn't retire that long ago, but even still,
yeah,
brilliant to see. The man who sort of inspired so many fighters and got so many fans into the sport. Yeah, just brilliant to see the Spider in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably one of the ones who really set up the UFC to where it is today, right? So there's Conor McGregor, who really put eyes on the sport and made UFC what it is right now. But then I think another personality is Anderson Silva. Like, he's right up there, if not even like above Conor, right? Because he came into the days where there was no Conor McGregor, and he didn't bring entertainment to UFC or people to UFC through like trash talk or any of the like outside of the cage sort of tactics. It was pure skill, and the skill set and the fighting style that he brought to the UFC is like unmatchable, right? Anyone close to that is maybe Adesanya, and Adesanya actually took inspiration from Anderson Silva. So that speaks a lot, and the number of title defenses he was he was able to make, the way he would put people out, like anyone you put in front of him, he would just make them look silly, in the early part of his career. And I'm one of those people who started, really watching MMA because of Anderson Silva. So, I mean, justified, could have been earlier, but he's a legend of the sport.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. He sort of had the dominance of GSP, except he was finishing people in those crazy ways. And yeah, like you say, Adesanya, Jamal Hill, a whole host of fighters were sort of giving him his plaudits and speaking about how they got inspired by him to train in the sport. We might not have had all these athletes competing, like these exciting strikers competing at the top of their divisions if it weren't for someone like Anderson Silva.
Yeah. And if you even look back at like the way, like where his downfall started with the Weidman fight, right? Even at that fight, he was just being too cocky, right? He was just being too arrogant, playing around. If you take that part out and just put it skill versus skill, if he wasn't doing that, he would win that fight. There was no doubt that he wouldn't win that. He was winning that fight, right? But he just got over cocky and got caught. And yeah. But and if that wouldn't have happened, probably he would have went on to like win even more and more fights, right? And maybe ended his career later on. But it just happened to happen that way.
Yeah, it's the way it goes sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I just remember watching Silva fighting Adesanya actually, and just being like, this is a proper turning of the guard, changing of the guard moment. It wasn't the most spectacular fight, but I just remember watching it live and being like, there's something special there. Just like, this new guy inspired by the old guy, and they're both going toe to toe still. It's still competitive. And I don't know. Yeah. Anderson Silva's a legend.
And I really feel like if you put Anderson Silva in his prime versus Adesanya in his prime, Anderson Silva would dominate that fight.
Do you think?
Because I really think so. Because like when he fought Adesanya, he didn't have the same speed. He was, he was in his, end game. That was the end game for him. As like the beginning for Adesanya. So I think it wasn't a good matchup there, but yeah, it was a passing of the baton.
Yeah, a great spectacle. Right. Well, I think that wraps things up. That's the first episode of the MMA Stream podcast that we're going to be now doing weekly, if not bi-weekly. Every event we're going to have post-fight reactions, probably pre-fight breakdowns, looking at news, stories, everything in between. I had a great time in this first episode. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And for all the audience, stay tuned, because we're going to bring you more and more content. We'll try to do the weekly, like Frank said, breaking down fights before they happen and adding in some more news. So keep a watch out for the upcoming episodes.
Sweet. Yeah, we out.